Perfect.
Yes, we are recording. So, Kate, it's wonderful to meet you online today. We've been working together for a while, and today I have the privilege of doing this interview. So, I would just like to introduce you. You are Kate Mieczkowska. You're an artist and the curator of the upcoming Goddess Now show, which is already gathering a lot of interest because you're doing some really timely and unusual things. So we all want to hear more about this. So you are the mastermind behind this show. And before we talk about the mission vision of the show, I'd just like you to tell the audience something about yourself. You're an artist, what drives you, what subject matter, your influences, things like that, please.
Okay, I was thinking about how to describe this, and I suppose the best way is that I make work about the relationship I have with the world. So that could be people, it could be animals, it could be other people's relationships, and kind of cause and effect, and then I place myself, especially in my most recent paintings, they're very autobiographical, so I kind of find a way of representing myself within these, and juxtaposing images or ideas that perhaps don't fit together, and trying to make sense of it all, really. And I like to make big paintings that are 6 feet by 8 feet, because it's actually rather nice for me to work performatively in this space, and start to think about it as a portal rather than a painting. So when I was little, it used to frustrate me that things didn't move on the canvas, and it's amazing now that we have video and we can make these things happen. But I go back to the frame, and it helps me to condense my thinking, to then pare back the imagery and start to make these relationships, and hopefully may not necessarily be a physical portal, but put the person into a mental portal, so that I can kind of start to get their subconscious to vibrate, and they look at these things and they're interesting, and they find strange relationships, and they have an experience which is probably similar but not the same as mine looking at it.
No, so you're also drawing people into relationship by painting on that canvas. When I was at art school, I was always taught to think about what was happening outside the frame of the canvas as much as what was happening inside it. That as the artist, you actually need to give that thought. It sounds like you're doing that.
And I learned that from an amazing guy at Winchester School of Art when I was studying sculpture, because actually that's what I did my BA in.
Okay.
And I felt a really great energy from that studio, and he was very, very good at just gently positioning you like a sort of clockwork toy. Going, right, now you're ready to go now, and it let you go off in your own direction and experience things and play with things and pick up objects and just push through and break down all of the little boundaries that you had within your mind or your experience. And we were trained isn't the right word, and I think we were encouraged to create a relationship with the outside world through our playing with these objects. And it was really interesting. Recently I went back into my sketchbooks from my very first week in the actually on the course, and I was pulling out some objects that I'd made in my first tutorial with him as part of our first week there, and they were really, really interesting, and I so enjoyed looking back through it all, and I put some of them up on Instagram, and it's fun to see them there now, all these years later, and still relevant to me and interesting to other people, which is great.
Yeah, but isn't it true also that what you do in your early period, often later, that is a revelation, because you see that the seeds for what you do as a maybe more mature artist, they are already there right at the beginning. And that's also why our teachers can teach us, but they can't teach us how to paint. They can hold the process for us and they can give us pointers. But just like you cannot teach another person to be a musician, you can't really teach them to be a painter, but you can hold the sacred space in which that journey unfolds, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And having a group of like-minded people who are on the same journey with you, and looking and talking and thinking together, it was a really valuable experience. And I made a lot of very, very good friends at art school. And it's lovely to see us all growing together and staying in contact, and having ups and downs in our personal lives, but looking at the work that's still made. I mean, even though we may not all think of ourselves as professional artists, but everybody is still making, which is the best thing about it.
Exactly, and it's a huge achievement because I was at art school, I think, 30, 32 years ago. I'm not sure how many people I was at art school with in Amsterdam who are still painting today. There's not many people like I hear from, or where I see any evidence that's going on. And I've heard people have gone into like related professions. So, to sort of do the course and then to maintain it on your own, to still paint on your own steam, just that is a huge achievement, no matter what you call yourself. So, well, thank you for giving that big background. I have quite a list of questions here, so we shall continue. So as well as being artists, I believe we have we have something in common that I think is unusual, because I know that you attended a school run by nuns, but when I was an art student in Amsterdam, I lived for 2 years. Like I rented a room with nuns in Amsterdam. I'm living in the tower, extremely long hair, like Rapunzel, like something out of a fairy tale. So nuns are not exactly a common theme in contemporary art. Yet we both have had that influence in our lives. I would like to hear, what influence did the nuns have on you and on your work and where you are today?
Oh wow! I think I kind of didn't appreciate the importance of the community when I left school and went into my 20s. The world was chaos and finding my way. But it wasn't until later, probably in my early 30s, and I sort of looked back on it, and then I realized that there were so many valuable elements of that experience, and it wasn't necessarily the material thing.
No.
It was the shared sense of purpose, the sense of duty, the very loving, very kind, very humorous, very gentle people that the sisters were. And I remember meeting one of them by accident, sort of in my late 20s, and she was just so beautiful, Imelda. She glowed,
Wow.
seriously,
Yeah.
just glowed. And yeah, and she was in her 70s. She was youthful still in her demeanor, but everything about her had lost its color. Her hair was white, her skin was pale. She was still, in very good shape for a lady of her age, but she was just a beautiful soul. And they were always provided me with a role model to think, well, if I'm struggling, I'm having a problem with something, or myself, or not feeling too good, I think, well, how would I be able to be more like that?
Yeah.
And they were loved. Some of them are still alive, but the majority of them, unfortunately, are dead now. And the order is no longer part. Only this year, actually, became separated from the main teaching function of the school, which yeah, it's sad. It's sad for me because it signifies an end of a very important era for 200 and something years, actually. But their legacy to me personally is really important, and I hope that I can take that with me and expand upon it and share it with other people if I can.
Yeah, so meaning that what the nuns gave you, that and their legacy lives on through you, and in a way that's the most beautiful gift you can give anyone. You really admire that you allow it to live on through what you express in the world. So that's beautiful. And also going to talk about the sacred and religion and spirituality a bit later in this interview. So I just wanted to bring the nuns in early because I think it's an important piece for both you and me. I know for me it really shaped my life, living with these nuns and the backdrop of their matins and vespers, and then being in chapel as I was on the way out, disciple to art school. And I'm so grateful experience. It was really formative, and also it was unique because that convent doesn't exist anymore. It was sold and turned into apartment blocks. So been back there once in Amsterdam and decided not to go anymore because what was there, it's gone and it's sad. And
yeah, it is sad. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that feeling. All right. So, different topic. It has so often been claimed that most taboos in the world of contemporary art have been broken by now. This is something I don't actually agree with at all. I can identify a number of issues where I think those taboos are still in effect. So I would be very interested to hear what you would like to say about that. Because in the upcoming Goddess Now exhibition, you have deliberately decided to tackle the twin themes of religion and spirituality in art. So, some people would say, and my own teachers have said it, like, don't go there, stay clear of that. So what could you speak to that?
Well, you see the point, our point now in terms of a global society, which we do live in, whatever we want to believe or choose is to think is different. It's happening. We have the internet. We disseminate information widely. Sometimes some governments don't approve of it, but it happens. And one of the things that every single human being shares on this planet is a religion of some sort. There's a methodology in interpreting their world, in living together, in how to commemorate the past, the present, the future, what those things symbolize, and how to construct it around a large group of people.
And do you think
it has
sorry, I think for some people religion has become a really difficult word. There is like a real move away from using the word religion, and then people have found other words. So for some people that might be something like philosophy, because they feel that is more neutral and it doesn't carry the weight of like the past of 2,000 years of church influence and things like that. So it might be helpful for the people viewing this if you said a little bit more about how you define the word religion.
It's a shared set of principles by which we learn to live successfully together, and how our outside world, how our shared histories, how our experiences feed into that, and the stories, the symbols, the ways that we communicate that differ from culture to culture.
Yeah.
Every single one of them has an interpretation of a divine and invisible higher being, higher power, God, whatever people choose to call, whether there's one or many, where things are, but that invisibility is there, and the themes are consistent through every single culture on the planet. We can't avoid it. We might as well.
They wear different coats, don't they? But you find them everywhere. So to just sort of sum that up also as that I think it's an illusion to think you can get away from that realm altogether. Some people think they can try that. But also like in my own work with clients, I see that it generally only holds until life doles out a big tragedy. And then suddenly people who claim to have no spirituality do start questioning what their spiritual beliefs are. And they suddenly realize that, there's like something there and I need to define my relationship with that great unknown, that great invisible realm. So well done. It's not easy to give a definition of that like on the cuff like that, but I think it's important, it's pertinent to the subject matter of this interview. All right. Well, following on from that, last year in 2019, I wrote and published a book titled Sacred Art. And I just wonder how you feel about the term sacred art. How do you view the relationship between contemporary art, especially, of course, the Goddess Now show, and the realm of the sacred?
I think the key, it's about symbolism. I mean, sacred is something that is within oneself, and how that is communicated to the outside world is the symbolism, if that makes sense. I would say sacred art. isn't all art to a certain extent sacred, because it's a communication, it's a dialogue with yourself, with the outside world, with the the larger than oneself idea. I mean, maybe it's not, I don't know.
Well,
But
I've had this, I'm a teacher of sacred art, so I end up having certain discussions with students over and over, and this topic has come up. And what has been pointed out to me to like reconcile it is that all art, has a sacred dimension if we exclude from the category art like graphics, kind of like putting nude women on cars to sell cars, and the kind of manipulating images on a purely commercial level. It's just like telling a woman to sell a car. I mean, my students, well, this was a long discussion, but somebody agreed on that could be, if you just call that graphics and not art, then what you just say is true for the world of art. I don't know what you would say to that.
Yeah. Graphics, commercialism. You could possibly argue that some kind of graphic art has a personal dimension to it, but it becomes political, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't want to. I mean, obviously one of the things that I'm trying to do within Goddess Now is look at boundaries, understand them, but not feel confined by them. And then when we start talking about definitions of what is this sort of art and that sort of art and all the rest of it, we kind of get into the territory where that ethos for me doesn't begin to function. So I think we have oh, sorry, this thing is bleeping at me now. We have different approaches to things. Everybody has a personal approach. We choose to share our understanding with other people and therefore become similar. But I wouldn't want to completely exclude somebody from the fold because they didn't conform to a certain standard, and that's that's why I find these sorts of questions difficult to.
Well, they are difficult, because that's why we bring division in again, and I think working within art or any spiritual discipline, you're constantly going to come up against the unity versus the division.
Yeah.
But if we always go for unity, like sometimes we have to draw boundaries to stay safe or to protect something. These are very, very difficult questions. And as you say, like, people have to all arrive at their own, where they draw the line. That has to be a personal position. But this interview is about you, so we want to hear what your take on this is. Okay. Again, a very different topic, but an important one. I know that you run a horse farm, and many people have told me that horses are incredible teachers and mentors for human beings. And I know in my own field that horses are used for healing and therapeutic reasons. I know they're used in like forms of family constellations work, where the horses like enter the field and that gives information about where the healing is for the person. I know that incredible almost miracles have been worked when children on the autistic spectrum have been introduced to horses and start working with horses. So I would just like to know, do you see your horses as your teachers? Do you ever paint horses? Do you feel there is a healing dimension to working with horses?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that my job with the horses is to analyze their behaviors and look at their natural behaviors in relation to what we ask them to do for us. And I kind of offer the horses a sort of therapeutic environment where if they have been damaged or they've had bad experiences, then we help them to readjust, relax, heal, re-establish relationships, and to feel more centered again, and therefore more connected to their human handlers, and be able to live in the relationship again. So what I learned from horses and can relate to human existence is very much about herd instinct, communication, becoming part of a group. I mean, every single horse within a herd knows his relationships with the others. He feels comfortable having a relationship with the others, and if you take all of those sort of triggers and points away from them, they become mentally ill.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know, I look at human and horse behavior, and we can only interact with horses, well, most animals, in the way that we do, that have a herd or a pack instinct, because we become part of that. So we're social creatures. We have very similar kind of needs to a horse in that respect. So people are going to shoot me down for this, but it's true. And I learn a lot through my horses about relationships with people. They are also fantastic mirrors for our emotions and our state of mind. So you know, we have to be extremely centered and very kind and firm. You know, I'm not saying you be a pushover, because you know, they're intelligent, especially the young ones. They can be extremely bright and very naughty, and if they think you're having an off day and there's an opportunity to get their own way and stamp on your foot and drag you up the yard, they will. You
so it's a bit like parenting children, Kate. You know, they'll do the same thing.
It is.
Yeah. Or an off day,
exactly. A ton of child,
a ton of child running away with it. Like,
Exactly. But in the same way that you have to look at your child and think, okay, I need to be loving and kind, but I also need to be firm and decisive, because they need to understand where the boundary is here.
Boundary thing again.
Yeah, exactly. But I paint horses. I brought horses into my work more recently, and interestingly in relation to women. And there's a theme which I'm sort of developing, which is autobiographical. And the last big painting that I made was of my great aunt and a younger version of myself. And she wasn't riding a living horse; she was on a fairground. Yeah, and it, you know, she was 90 at the time when we used the images of her. She's extremely elderly, bless her now, but amazing lady with masses of energy and a really good friend, a really good friend to me. We have a good laugh. She's proper naughty, and
another wonderful mentor in your life.
Oh yeah, very lucky. Yeah, she must be what, 94, but she's no, possibly not that old. 91. Yeah.
Well, still.
And still, you know, still with us and still funny. But horses, relationships, yes. What else do they teach me? Yeah, how to be a better human being, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's the biggest teaching of all, isn't it? Well, yeah, and I've heard this from other people as well. So it's like, thank you for bringing that in. I think it's important to talk about that. I'm going to go back to the Goddess Now show now, and I would like to know, how did you select the artists participating in the Goddess Now show? Because I know you made a decision to include artists from the Middle East as well. And could you tell us about your hopes and reasons for including artists from both the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere? And I was wondering if you were hoping to balance or heal something through making that selection.
Absolutely. And you know, I was on my MA, I met many people from all over the world. It was a really good experience. And I met a lady from Iraq, and we talked a lot about politics in the Middle East. And my husband took a job recently in Saudi Arabia, so I had the very good fortune to be able to go meet him and experience Riyadh. My parents used to live there when I was a small child, so some parts of the old city, because in the 70s, in the late 70s, it was a very, very different place.
Yeah, wow.
But it was amazing. There were parts of it which were familiar to me, even though I was very small. But I because of the horses, because of the race horses, the Arab horses, I'm always looking and aware of what's happening with the Middle East, and obviously, unfortunately, because of the recent Gulf Wars as well, and meeting people who have left different regions and come to settle in the UK and talking to them. And when I had the opportunity to go to Riyadh, I thought, you know what? I should go and meet some women here. I should go and see what's happening with the art. And they were really welcoming. Great galleries, lots of lovely women, and they were so interested in what I was doing, and I thought, why can't we just share some of this? We need to get a dialogue going, get some people over in the UK. There's one lady who's in the show with us. I saw her paintings in the gallery in Riyadh. They were vibrant, they were challenging, they were talking about what was happening right that minute in politics in Riyadh. And I thought, gosh, this is a brave lady, you know, these big, bold. And I was so pleased when she said that she'd like to show with us. And you know, I feel that there's a lot that we in the media we have relentless negative stereotypes thrown at us about different regions and about different people, and it's just not real.
No, it's exactly what you say. It's a stereotype, isn't it? And that's also like why we talked about religion a moment ago. But you know, in the West, we have such a negative impression of anything like, you know, Islam or Islamic. Well, actually, if you take the time to study that culture and its underlying principles, there is so much incredible beauty there. But that's like the same with that. We shouldn't judge Christianity by its worst excesses. They do exist. I'm not at all denying that they exist, but it's not fair to judge a whole religion by like, the absolute worst manifestation of it, or the most fundamentalist or most distorted expression of it. That is just like we owe it to the other and to other groups like that to really educate ourselves, and then we can build healing bridges and we can have healing dialogue. Right?
Exactly, and then by seeing a painting like this coming out of Saudi Arabia, it shows a very different face to the one that we're told through the media, and also I hope it gives more women confidence to be brave and try new things, and talk to Westerners, and you know, begin to open up about their positive experiences in Islam or their positive experiences in the home, and how much they love their children, and you know, they go to work, and we start to see all of these positive things happening, and
also the commonalities, not only differences, but the commonalities, like fellow human beings, you know, making a good life for themselves and their children. I mean, that's the human condition. Yeah, and sometimes we can get so focused on difference that we do not see that anymore. We don't see the humanity of the person in front of us, and that's a terrible thing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where the I think, going back to your question about the sacred element of art, this is where this part is so important. And you know, the shared experience, the real values, the love and the kindness and the generosity of humanity, as opposed to the relentless negativity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I'm thrilled to be part of this. I'm really happy to be working with you because I totally support that. I think that's such an important message. And as I said, not just a message to me, it's like a bridge being built, and the world really needs that, in my opinion. So I thank you for doing that. It's really important work. So another question about that. Why 8 women or artists identifying as female? How was that choice made?
I wanted to use 8. I think I remember us talking about this at the beginning of this project. It's a special number.
Sacred number.
It's a sacred number, and it's a symbol of infinity. And I believe it just feels like it feels right. You know, any more than that, we couldn't take the voices in, or they would be too similar. And at least with this number of people, we can have, you know, a balanced but diverse range of voices.
And
it felt right.
Yeah, and then why artists, you know, women artists who are identifying as female? Like some people would say, wouldn't it be more balanced to, you know, have both genders there, or all genders there?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. Yeah, no. No, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to show strong women doing positive things,
Yeah,
and also I don't know. It never occurred to me. It never occurred to me. I mean,
yeah,
we obviously what we're looking at when we talk about feminism, particularly, it has a sort of negative connotation, and I've read about different parts of feminist and gender studies from the 70s, and
yeah,
please, I'm not an academic, but I come across some angry and I'm just thinking, this is not, I mean, obviously going back to a fundamental core in what I do with the horses, I give the nervous or the angry or the frightened ones a strong role model to learn from, and they all
yeah,
relax.
yeah,
And I'm thinking, we need more positive people who can show others that being a woman with a family and a career, and other women can do this. It's all possible. We don't. I'm a bit possibly simplistic about this, but I'd rather celebrate women and show strength, and
yeah,
then look at trans issues. Maybe in a further show we'll bring that into play, because the idea of gender, it yeah, it's a little destructive to equality. And I can see your point with
So
saying,
it's
well, why
just
don't
such a hot topic right now that I think people who see the write-up of the show, who visit the Goddess Now website, they may just wonder about it. So as your interviewer, I feel I need
yeah,
to
no, I mean
pop the question.
it's no, it's a good point, but yeah, I think I just wanted to look at it from a female perspective for a
Yeah,
change, not and then taking it a stage further in the next show, hopefully, we look at the core beliefs behind equality,
yeah,
and then when you
absolutely.
start to, yeah, I don't hate men. Men are marvelous. We love men.
We love men. I also believe we are both married. We have an important man in our lives.
Yeah, yeah,
So, just
that's
to
true.
say that, yeah, and also, of course, in the history of art overall, there has been enormous focus on the achievements of men. So there's also a balancing that occurs to really, put some unapologetic focus on art created by women. I'm actually very much in favor of that. But as I said, also just try to ask some, the questions that may occur to the
Yeah,
people
no problem.
who consider watching the show. Okay. Well, another very contemporary issue, Kate. How has COVID-19 affected or influenced the show, and has that been for good or for bad or for both?
Wow. Well, the show, in its original format and idea, couldn't go ahead because of COVID-19.
Mm,
I think that possibly allowed me to gather more information, to make more connections, and it was a shock, but a good thing,
yeah,
and I mean, now COVID-19 is still affecting us because we're going to put the whole show online. But even before all of it, or COVID-19 happened, I had planned to have a very strong online presence, because one of the limitations of the gallery that we were showing in was that the upstairs and the downstairs parts weren't accessible to wheelchairs. And
oh,
I
yeah,
yeah, and I'm thinking, well, if somebody who's in a wheelchair makes the way to come and see the show, how are they going to see upstairs? How are they going to see
yeah,
downstairs? They're going to have the artists here. Wouldn't it be good if we could show them the work online and talk to them at the same time?
yeah,
That was one consideration. The other consideration is that all of these shows are always in London,
yeah,
and it's very expensive to get to. It's time consuming. not everybody can get there, and I wanted to make it as accessible as possible for as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And I figured the website would be a good way to do that. And also one of the other the educational parts of this was going to be video based, and so we needed to have an online presence to make that accessible and disseminate it as widely as possible. So the whole technology part of COVID-19 has been wonderful, I think. And now we have to look at it. We have to look at the internet. We have to do Zoom conversations.
We have to develop tech skills.
Yeah, we have to do it. We have
so we can do this interview.
yeah, exactly. And that's been a really, really good thing. And I think we're saving a lot of fuel. We're saving a lot of time. Yeah. We're also being able to communicate more quickly. Yeah. Obviously, you know, from a paranoid perspective, surveillance of all of this is very possible, which makes me a little bit uneasy. But you know, we're not breaking the law. We're not doing anything bad, so it's not a problem.
And not just you've done another groundbreaking thing. I just want to give a mention here, because like when I've talked about the show to people, people have been so touched by that, and that you've been running a competition on Instagram where children and young people can like make videos of like what like Mother Earth is to them. And then you've even had a competition where they can earn a prize, and you have a wildlife photographer who's like, you know, judging the entries. And I think just that has been so amazing because, you know, as you know, I work a lot with children and families, and I have a family. And a lot of the people that I have like distributed the information to, they said, oh, finally, at long last, here we have like a show that actually involves children. And people said, now, this should be the norm for all the shows we're going to have in the future. Like, why is this not done for every art show? So I just like wanted to mention that and give you the opportunity to say something about it, because I think it's absolutely vital.
Yeah, and I was really at the core of all of this is a belief that our attitude to ourselves and ultimately our environment, if we have more empathy with ourselves, we'll have more empathy with other beings, and therefore we won't be as destructive. And our religious practices and our spiritual practices and our environmental practices, I feel, are very, very linked.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a way of reflecting our changing attitudes to the environment in a loving and interactive way, not just making a painting or a sculpture, because it kind of, you know, that as much as I love painting and sculpture, the resonance of them is limited. And but if you ask a child or a family, they've all got mobile phones.
I know.
And all got mobile phones. Everybody's going on walks. Yeah. And you ask them to look at the outside world and become fascinated by something about the natural world. They'll start to learn to appreciate it differently. They have fun through that process. They'll remember it. I'm hoping that also we can start to develop this competition. And I mean, obviously, originally before COVID-19, it was going to be held with a couple of schools in Bermondsey.
Yeah, it was.
And I'd arranged through the education department and the art department there to go in and work with the kids and hold the workshops with you in the gallery and show them the work and all these sorts of things. And I'm hoping that we might be able to develop these workshops as part of other community arts networks. I would love that to happen. That would be brilliant.
I think we need to get more creative with it. You know, I think that can still be done. There's still ways of doing that. Like no matter if COVID recedes or if, like, you know, a certain amount of social distancing and stuff like remains in force. Ultimately, it's all modeling play. You know, as artists, we can be creative enough to still work with that. So I think that's just an exciting thing we need to dig into more. We don't need to resolve it here in this interview, but I think that's definitely something we need to talk more about. And because I think it's really important. And even, you know, if hopefully at some point COVID recedes and, you know, we will not go back to normal, but there will be a new normal we're all building together. Then in all these videos that the children have submitted, we also have a very interesting archive of kind of like what people were doing. And it's especially the younger generation, are going to be the leaders in the future. You know, like what was going on for them, what was on their minds, what they were focusing on in this period. So, you know, only doing something else. It's really important to bring children in and not make them feel excluded from some kind of adult art world. Make it inclusive.
And what would be really lovely as well is if they could look in, if we managed, I have sent the message out to some families in Saudi Arabia, for instance, and other parts of the world, you know, the children from Britain can go and see what the other children from Saudi Arabia are looking at, and you know, we're not encouraging them to go out and spy on other people. We're wanting them to look at the natural world, wildlife. Their mothers.
Children.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Actually, I will also. I've taken on summer breaks. I've taken a break from newsletters. But when I do, you know, like when I come back to London, I'll have to do a newsletter before the autumn. I also like put it in there again, and that is a global.
Yeah, it'll keep running. It'll keep growing.
Even more locations involved in this. So it says, you know, that's like to be continued. Yeah, I have one exciting question for you. Kate, if they make you the curator of Tate Modern, what type of shows and exhibitions and projects would you be running there? I rather hope they will, actually.
Oh, that would be so cool. Well, I think shows that people can show in themselves. You know, that's what I've learned through this Goddess Now exhibition, especially the Mother Nature video project, that if people are part of the creative process and they see other works of art which are inspiring, wonderful, great, they're telling stories, but they're rather controlling. And I think, you know, taking away some of that mechanism will allow people who haven't had any experience of art before to want to engage with it. And one of, again, I'm going to go back to my first year at Winchester School of Art, because I remember watching Ian Dawson, who was my lecturer there, doing these art car boot sale things and just getting kids to come and make anything out of anything. And I looked at it going, but that's not what proper artists do. And it took me a long, really. And took me a long time to get my head around what was actually going on. And I thought, yeah, this is what it's about. And if people feel that they can approach the institution, that they're part of it, that they're inputting into it and making it change and grow, then we're going to see some really interesting things happening. And I think it's a crying shame that arts education has been given such a bad name, and people have been made to feel that creativity doesn't matter. They've really missed a point. They don't understand the nature of a process like a foundation course, and how simple actions and reading and doing research. I mean, as artists, as you know, we have to know about all sorts of things other than picking up a pencil. And it's such an important part of our experience. So if I was curating exhibitions at Tate Modern, that's what I would do. And I would pull in, I mean, I'm not afraid to say I would pull in some challenging work and bring pieces together that may not necessarily make sense in the eyes of the establishment, and you know, I would give people something to think about without obviously being rude, but
Maybe important to say that just in case they watch this video and they consider giving you the job, you know.
Whoops.
You know, so well, I think, you know, like maybe we should even contact them and we're further along with organizing the show.
We'll invite them. We'll send them some messages when we have the panel discussion.
I think we should do that.
Invite them in.
A few years ago, there was this really posh party in London, which was through my husband's work, so I was more there as the wife on his arm. And then I ended up talking to someone, I had no idea who she was. And then there was like a talk going on, and there was a bowl of like cheese sticks that for some reason I can be clumsy, knocked it over, like all over her like dress and stuff. So she and I like cleaned it all up, brushed her off, and then she was called on stage, and she was she was like the if not the curator, but the what do you call it? The head honcho of Tate Modern. And I thought like, and all the time I had with her, I was like dusting cheese straw bits of her dress. That was a missed opportunity if there ever was one.
You know how to open the conversation now when you see her now. Do you remember that day when somebody dropped cheese straws all over you before you went on stage? That was me.
That was me, exactly. So anyway, so some unfinished business there. I think I still owe her an apology, right?
Yeah, we'll give you a glass of wine and a mince pie to say sorry at our exhibition.
Exactly. So, but just to say, it's funny how these little seeds are planted sometimes. But it was funny when she was called on stage and introduced. I realized who I had been dealing with and chatting to. Anyway, so it was also to warn you that like I have that kind of clumsy trickster element. You better know this about me before we do more work together. Okay. Well, we've talked about children before, Kate, but I would love to hear, do you have any advice for young people who are either, going to attend art school? We have now a whole group of people who, due to COVID, have been like out of school for half a year. My middle son is starting uni in September. My eldest son has just returned to his university city. So I'm aware of all these like young people out there, they have their dreams. And some of them are dreaming of studying art and going to art school. So, and maybe becoming a professional artist. I would really love to hear, do you have any advice or guidance for those people?
Yes. Don't give up. Don't give up, ever. Even if you have a bad point and things get hard, just hope that it will pass and keep going. I find that I get my best ideas when I'm exercising or walking or
horse riding, maybe?
Or what? Yeah, absolutely. Out and about doing what might be very mundane things. So, try to find things to do that allow you to stay physically active, look after yourselves, eat well, and just be kind to yourselves. Don't expect it all to happen tomorrow, but just keep pushing. And then all of a sudden, a bit like my sketchbook in the bottom of my bookcase that I hadn't seen for 8 years, you'll look back and think, my God, that was wonderful. Why didn't I think anything of it at the time? But that's the other important thing, is keep a record, not obsessively, but anything that's interesting, stick it in your book, stick it in your phone. Try and keep physical things around you, though, because the digital world is good in some respects, but it's not everything.
No, it's not the whole world.
No, it's not the whole world. The whole world is here in reality, and stay grounded and stay with us. Don't float off into the ether. But if they need to take holidays off social media, switch it off. Go away.
Yes, I mean, it sounds like great advice for people our generation, but I could just hear my 3 children laugh very loudly. I mean, they're not hearing me right now, but like what? Like, this is like our world. Like, someone might book me a message, and if I don't reply within 2 seconds, that is rude, and they drop me. I mean, there's a whole thing around that. That's, as I said, if I hadn't been a mother of 3 teenagers, I would not have understood that at all. So, I agree. I mean,
it's a good point. That kind of immediacy. I mean, I see this when with training the horses, and it's something I should have mentioned earlier. But time. You cannot appreciate how important the whole cycle of 1 year is to an organism, in terms of its molecular structure, how it changes, how then the perception of the whole world is quite different. And if we can see ourselves in a longer term view, not just like a 5-year business plan, but you know, if we can be a little bit kinder to ourselves, and especially in an educational process, look at, you know, 2 to 3 years in your life, you're going to be a very different person at the end of it. So, you know, look after yourself, put good things in, take the time to read, to be quiet, you know, to think, to allow things to sink in, and change your intellectual and your muscle memory, and you know, be like a big sponge, take it all in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also some young people I have worked with who then say, "Oh, we don't read anymore, like we watch YouTube." I mean, you know, I've had that put to me, and I've asked, you know, I've well-meaningly asked 16-year-olds what they are reading at the moment, and they give me that look, and they say, "Reading? You mean like books? No, we watch YouTube."
Yeah,
I mean, there's
it's
a
hard one.
whole
It's a
different
hard one because,
generation coming up the lines, for sure.
yeah, and some of us find reading difficult, you know. There's no two ways about it, and especially if you're dyslexic or whatever, it's not the easiest way to assimilate information. And yeah, okay, I mean, it depends what you watch.
Yeah.
You know, if you watch rubbish, you'll put rubbish in your brain. So, you know,
Yeah, but
they have to be selective with what they're looking at. But, you know, one of the biggest resources for me at our art school was the video library.
yeah, no,
And
I believe that. Yeah, yeah.
and I would go home to my flat, and I would watch Andrei Tarkovsky, who I'd never experienced before. You know, all of these wonderful directors and beautiful films that made me look at time, imagery, and metaphor differently.
Yeah.
And then there were documentaries in there, and actually, you know, the kind of the libraries in the art schools have brilliant films. But that was my focus, and I stayed in there. And I also had access. I mean, I still go to the library occasionally now as an alumni, but I should go more now. COVID's over, we can do that. But
Yeah,
I love being in there. I really do. It's calming. You can focus, and you're right. They need to be there and read and just understand the meditative process of reading, and the ability to focus is
and I think
really
that's
important.
what I'm more concerned about, maybe less concerned about like reading versus video, because I know there are a lot of things out there that I can't even access because I don't have the text. I also like, you know, have to admit that I'm a dinosaur and that new generations will do things a different way. Because like I use technology that my mother like, doesn't even know exists. I mean, my mother wouldn't know what Zoom is. You know, she barely understands what a video call is, and I can't make her do one. So we have to accept that all generations are going to have their own thing. But I think the point you make about to allow meditative spaces, like spaces for reflection and thought and sitting with yourself, like no matter what the other thing is you do, is actually very important. I think that's very valuable advice, because that can get crowded out in that like 24/7 thing. Or some young people now go to bed with the phone like in the bed with them, charging in the bed. And then if messages ping in the night, they just rouse themselves from sleep and ping off a few replies, and they sleep for another 2 hours. I think that is completely horrendous. That for me destroys everything I stand for, and I believe in, but that's what they do. So, you know, but I think it's important that dinosaurs like you and me, I'm probably more of a dinosaur than you are, but if we keep that dialogue going with these younger generations, and that it's one also not only of teaching, but also of like listening, really seeing, you know, they really have their own ideas and their own visions, and they're a different generation. And, you know, I think it's really, really good for us to have that dialogue. I think it's important. So, this is going to be my final question, Kate, today. What is next? You've already referred to a few things, but any future plans, visions, dreams, you know, love to hear.
Oh, I have a couple of sneaky things tucked away up my sleeve. Yeah, there's a couple of fairly large scale projects I'm rather hoping will come off. But no, what I would love to happen for me is to be able to have a show where I put, you know, the series of paintings I've been talking to you about, they're autobiographical paintings. I'd love to put them somewhere. I'd love to put them somewhere, you know, make the series of, I'm hoping about 7 of them. And yeah, that would make me happy. And obviously the next phase, in my mind, the evolution from this project into the next and taking it on tour. We've talked about going to America. That would be fabulous. And also Saudi Arabia. All of these things could be possible. They were possible before COVID-19. They are still possible now. But obviously, you know, I'm keen that we get this first one established. We make it successful for everybody, and then we can build on the model and you know, take it further. Because it's about inclusion. It's about investigating difference in a positive way, and allowing people to have a voice without fear of reprisals or repercussions, and a voice listened to. You know, we talk about women and just having women, but a lot of the time women aren't listened to. You know, we're not for various reasons.
And then creating these sort of safe spaces where that kind of communication can occur. And like you, I'm very excited because, you know, I teach internationally, so I work on different continents. That's part of my job. I'm standard now because of COVID, working on Zoom, but normally speaking, I fly around and I teach in different locations. But it also means I have the good fortune of being connected. Like I know people in different locations. I have quite a big network. So it's a set once my newsletter goes out and like I can more return to normal work, you know, and I've already introduced you to a few people, but there might be a few more.
Yeah.
But I'm like trying to build these bridges as well, because, you know, we've already talked about the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere, but imagine putting in more continents as well and really like create a unity out of all of those different perspectives and respectful ongoing dialogue. That's sort of, you know, connect what is going on and learn from each other. I think that's a wonderful vision.
Yeah, so, and learning from each other.
Posted. Yeah. So, Kate, we're coming to the end of this interview. I would just like to ask, I think we've covered a wide range of topics, but is there anything that we have not covered that you would like to say before we close the interview?
Not really. No, I think I've really enjoyed talking to you about this. It's been a lot of fun, and you know, I don't think so.
Okay, but then maybe we are done for today. Could you maybe also give some like contact details? And I'm sure when you use the video, you'll put like a description with it. But if people watch this wherever they are and they think, wow, this is like a project I'd like to link with, how is, as the coordinator, how would you like to be contacted? Are you open to receiving emails, or would you like people to go to the website?
Emails, absolutely, emails, and send links to websites, or particularly if they want to get involved in the Mother Nature 2020 project, they can look on Instagram for at Goddess Now Mother Nature 2020. Okay, or if they visit my website, which is katemieczkowska.com, they can find links to Goddess Now, and goddessnow.website will take them straight to the information about the show and onto the links for Mother Nature 2020.
Okay, that's excellent. Because I think it's important that people know this, because, you know, sometimes, you know, you watch videos on YouTube or whatever with a very interesting person, and then you're not quite sure, like, is this just like offered as an interview, or is this person actually open to hearing from me? If I have a really great idea or a question, is it actually okay to email in or not? So I think it's important to say that at the end of an interview.
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear from people, and you know, very, very open to include. We have a Facebook page where we feed work into from women artists from all over the world. There's some wonderful projects which are kind of similar to this that we're also highlighting on there, so people can show images and talk about their work and meet other people. And it's very much the Facebook page Goddess Now Bermondsey Project Space, I think it's still in the same name for the physical, the unicorn show, I think we might call it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but no, we'll yeah.
word unicorn also has another meaning. I think my husband was explaining to me that in the world of business, a unicorn has a kind of meaning that I wasn't even aware of. I can't even remember what it is now. But just like you have a bull market and a bear market, you have unicorns. I don't think it's entirely positive, if I remember right.
No, it's not. No. But the physical art show in relation to COVID-19 is a bit like that. Yeah.
It's a bit like that. You have to develop the properties of a unicorn. I also just have my son here outside the window looking in, so we just had it's symbolic, the younger generation, sort of like checking what we say we need to weave them in. He was here outside the window, so I just gave him a look.
Pulling faces.
Yes.
Yes.
Checking on what his witchy mother is doing here in her building in Sweden. Okay, Kate, so this has been...
Thank you so much, it's really lovely.
Well, thank you for being here. I think it's been a good conversation between Sweden and the UK and putting out there this vision of like more places in the world connecting up. So thank you for all you shared with us today. And, you know, wish you the very best of luck on all you're doing. I do hope you offer that job at Tate Modern. So we'll see how that goes.
No. Bless you. Look, take care. Have a lovely time.
And you too. We're going to close it for now. Okay. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Let's see.